Hey there, friEdCast enthusiasts. Welcome to a special episode that's about to turn your education world upside down, all thanks to Amy's revolutionary new book, Beyond Worksheets. Joining us today are two incredible guests, the dynamic duo of education, Jess and Amy. Together we'll dive into the essence of student-centered learning, explore Amy's game-changing strategy of question slips, and brace yourselves for a unique twist, a quick show and tell of socks. Get ready for an episode that's just not educational, but delightfully unexpected. It's time to unravel the magic of learning with a deep dive into Chapter 9 of Amy's new book, Beyond Worksheets. Good day, everybody! Welcome, friEd fans. We have a very, very special episode today, because typically we do these virtually, but we are together in the same room, breathing each other's air.
It's exciting. Kind of creepy when you say it that way.
We are.
Please don't breathe my air.
We are. And wow, we've had a great 2024 so far.
Yeah,
So far.
definitely.
It's been amazing.
We were off for a couple of days, and here we are back at work again.
In person.
Yeah.
With you. I mean,
It's
that's
nice to be in person.
Yeah.
It's the win.
Daryl.
See, we could look.
Love the Daryl.
Look, aww.
So much love.
But if you don't know me, I'm Daryl. I'm an experienced designer for friEd Technology, and we have two amazing guests with us today. They share a very dynamic relationship, and I'm going to explain to you why in just a second. We have Jessica Powell-Albright, the Executive Director of Partnerships.
And events. Don't forget
And events.
Yes.
What kind of events?
Like conferences and things we go to do for marketing and for, learning events mostly. But yeah,
Okay.
pretty much any event kind of falls my way until I can figure out who I can task it out to. Pickleball events will definitely go to you.
Oh my gosh,
Yes.
I'm wearing pickleball socks. Look.
Oh my gosh, you are.
I am. I can't
Anybody
prepare.
who's just listening to this is going to have to go check out the YouTube version to see the pickleball
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll tell you exactly where I got those.
socks. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of interest in that.
And we have the star of the show today. We've got the CEO and founder of friEd Technology, Amy Mayer.
I was waiting to see who that was going to be.
Yeah. Oh, and also the author of the book that we're going to be talking about today, Beyond Worksheets.
Yes.
I didn't
This is
realize-
the very first conversation about Beyond Worksheets. It truly is.
Yeah. And we had the pleasure of getting a sneak peek
Yes.
of Chapter 9.
Chapter
the
9.
last chapter?
No, there's 12.
There's 12
Yeah,
chapters.
12 chapters.
And, I read it I was at Jiffy Lube waiting for my oil change.
Or is it Giphy Lube?
Is it Oh,
Oh, my
I
shots
do it?
fired.
let me turn off the
already.
camera.
Man, that was
Rewind.
fast.
Oh, man, I believe it's Jiffy Lube.
That didn't take long at all
Oh
to
my
get
gosh,
there.
now my blood pressure is going up. My heart's palpitating. Okay, but anyways, at Jiffy Lube, and what I was going to say there? I was going to say it felt like you were there in person
Oh, good.
talking to me about teaching.
Oh,
and
good.
this one particular strategy, which we're going to talk about in a second, which I believe if I could go back to the classroom, I would use it right away.
I would use it tomorrow. That's
Tomorrow.
what happened to me. I learned about it one day. I used it the next day. And I used it every time I taught anything from then on. And I wish I would have used it last week when I taught sewing class.
Sewing class.
Yeah, sewing like with a machine. I taught that last week, and I was wishing for question slips. Yeah.
Okay. Because you sewed these. Yeah, you're an expert sewer, aren't
Oh,
you?
this is my finest work right here. These socks that are on our microphones.
And we
yes.
couldn't live without them in the audio world. But anyways, and I said that you two share a very special relationship because
We
at
have a
one
long
point,
history.
We do.
at
Yeah.
one point you were Jess's teacher, right?
Yes, but I prefer it when I used to substitute teach. So I used to work in central office at the school district, where the first school district we both worked in together. And I would go and substitute teach in her classroom.
Yes.
And her kids would always think that she had been my teacher instead of me being her teacher. So
They were in
I
fifth grade,
really-
okay? They didn't know. They had no concept of age or time, of course.
Okay, well, that was pretty consistent over the years. And they always were like, oh, Miss Powell was your teacher too, huh? And I was like, yep, that's precisely correct, kids.
Yeah.
Miss Powell was also my teacher.
I did teach you things.
You
I did.
You've taught me many things.
Yes.
But first, I was your teacher.
That's correct. And
Yeah.
I probably known you I think actually technically more than half my life.
Yeah.
Which is pretty impressive. I don't think I know many other people that long. So
Right. We've had a lot. So first, that was our first relationship, and then you went to college. I kept in touch with you, and then you came back and became a teacher.
Correct.
And then I was your basically kind of staff development person in the technology department.
Yep.
And then we worked together in another job after that, doing instructional technology, and now we work here together. So yeah, we've been together a long time.
She can't get rid of me. She's been trying for like 30 years, but
No,
got a lot of stick-to-itiveness.
No. So let's talk a little bit about your book, shall we?
Yes, let's do
Let's
it.
do it.
I hear we should. The publisher says you should talk about
Oh, okay. That's where we're gonna check mark that box there.
Right.
But so, what was the inspiration behind it? What made you decide to write this book and tell your life story about in it?
Well, I had been approached by a couple of publishers before who were like, hey, Amy, you should write a book about Google stuff, because that's really what I've done the most of in my career is Google implementation type things, learning with Google, stuff like that. And I just didn't really feel very inspired to write that. I feel like those books become outdated really easily, and they don't hit at the thing that intrigues me the most. So I do love software, and I love like intriguing things that you can do with software. That is appealing to me, but not enough to write a whole book about it. So I really wanted to write a book about teaching and the things that I have learned in my career about teaching, and really a broader sort of perspective of our profession. And I have been the victim of many book studies, and I know you have, and you probably have too. And I was thinking this whole time of writing this of what did I want that book to be that we did the book study on? What did I want it to say? What did I need it to say for me as a teacher inside a school system? And another thing I wanted to really explore is what can teachers do on their own? Because so often I was in a situation where I really felt compelled and called to make a change. But I worked within a system, and the system had rules and guidelines that I couldn't undo. I couldn't necessarily change those things. So I was always trying to figure out what can I do within the system that I work in that will make that change I'm looking for, and help me feel like I'm really being successful as a teacher, and like my students are really being the most successful they can be as students within the system. And I just thought, I haven't read that book before. So that's the book that I want to write. And luckily I found a publisher, or a publisher found me, and they were open to that being the message of this book is how do we change education when we are one person and we work within a broad system. So that's really what it's about.
And from reading that one chapter, I felt that.
Oh, good.
I really did. And you're right. You should see in my closet, I have stacks and stacks and stacks of books about Google Classroom, right?
Yes.
And that's pretty outdated. But I read this, and because it's been, when were you in the classroom last? Like, when did you actually employ this strategy?
Well, I taught college more recently than anything else, which I know a lot of people are going to say, well, there's not a lot of connections. I taught at a junior college, a local junior college, and that there actually were, it was pretty much like I always thought, I'm going to teach 13th grade.
I was just
now.
going to say, it's like 13th grade, junior college.
Yeah, so it was freshmen in junior college. So it was much more like public school teaching than if you're teaching sophomores or juniors or whatever. But it's been a long time since I've done that, and I actually can't think how long it's been. I'd probably have to go back and look at LinkedIn. But I do teach people things all the time. But since I have taught children, it's been since I taught college classes. So it's been a long time.
Because this strategy, it's like, things change. Education changes. You have new strategies that come out using technology. But the strategy that I read from this chapter is like, oh, this is so relevant today. And
I
felt
feel
like
the same way.
During that time when it was introduced, it may have been like super revolutionary for the
Yes.
teachers and the principals who saw it in action. Because you had focused on, and we'll talk about this, student-centered learning.
Yes, and what a fallacy that term is.
Right. So give us a little bit of what you explained in the book, and because you compared student-centered learning to like differentiated learning or personalized learning.
Yeah.
So what does that mean to you, and how should teachers take that term and understand from it?
It's a problematic term, and I think that if I said that in a room of teachers, like, I might get applause. Like, student-centered learning is a very problematic term, and it's a problematic idea, because what ends up happening is we get so consumed with how things need to be for students, we forget that the resources that we have are adult resources. So I'm not talking about resources like, do we have the right number of books or money or whatever, but I'm saying that there's a human being in charge of that classroom who is the teacher, and that teacher has a certain amount of resources. Like, you have emotional resources, you have these resources you're bringing into the classroom. And what student-centered learning means to most people is that we like completely disregard the adult resources in the classroom, and we only think about what the students need.
Well, and it's kind of led to a culture of do for students until you burn out.
Yes.
You know, it's really led to teachers just giving it 150%.
And that being the only acceptable thing you can do
And
if you're a good teacher.
Exactly. And you know, it's funny because 150% is not possible.
No.
But we use that kind of terminology all the time. Give it your all, give it 110%. Well, you can only give 100% starting with. And also, like, I've given it 100%. I'm out now. I'm at 90%.
Right.
I'm
And
at
so
80%.
by Christmas, you're like looking for another job.
Exactly.
You know, like that's what you're doing during your conference time that you don't have because you're going to ARDS and stuff like that. But you can't, that is not sustainable.
Right.
And so it's led to a culture in education that absolutely, and we're watching it crack apart right now is what's happening. So it's January 2024, just in case you're watching this later, and what's happening right now is our education systems are cracking apart. And the part of the reason why is because the pendulum has swung so far over to student-centered that we forgot we're dealing with limited adult resources, and we cannot actually do that. We have to make some changes in our profession that are really important. But another reason why that term is so stressful to teachers is because, and I hope I'm right about this. I'm curious what teachers say about this. I think I am, because I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of teachers. I think that most people don't really know what it means.
Right.
They think that, well, now I have to make a separate lesson plan for 5 different kids in this class of 35, or else I'm not being a good teacher or whatever. Well, that's just not sustainable. You can't do that. But we've been led into this mentality that this is what we have to do in order to be a good teacher, and that has caused so much stress in our profession. And we've been in this place where we're not supposed to think about our needs as an educator for so long that now we're at this breaking point. And so I want this book to say to people, you are not a bad teacher because you cannot make 6 lesson plans for every single day. This book is going to show you some ways that you can sustain, having a personal life and also feel like you're doing a good job for your students and for all your students. I'm not one of those people who says, well, sorry, you're not at the 80th percentile bubble, so we can't help you in public ed. I don't believe that's true. But there are some strategies that you can use that are going to make this sustainable. And I think question slip is just one from this book of those strategies that's going to help you create a sustainable environment that is student-centered, yes, but where we don't pretend like there's not a teacher involved in the equation.
And I was one of those teachers too.
You're 120%.
I was
Darren.
trying to. I was like, when am I going to have time to play pickleball?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Or spend time with my wife watching our favorite shows and stuff. And when I heard different personalized learning, differentiated learning, I'm going to make a lesson for every student that fits
That's
their
what it
needs.
sounds like, right?
That's what it is what it sounds like. But then I lucky for me at my campus, I had good instructional coaches who told me this is what we mean by it. Let me show you how it's done. Let me show you some strategies. So for me, project-based learning became huge in my classroom.
Yes.
And you mentioned in your book, it's like instead of the teacher doing 120% of the work and being exhausted at the end of the day, flip that around and put the onus on the student.
Right.
So there was a chart in your book, and it was an amazing chart. It was like instead of doing this on the left side, you do this on the right side. So give us some examples. Like how when we say student-centered learning, how with the things that teachers do in their classroom now, how could they make it happen where they're not stressed out and spending so much time meeting the needs of every student individually.
Right. Well, I hope that in the book it's really, really specific, but just to answer the question a little bit more globally there, like the thought is that, and this chapter is called Stop Stealing the Learning, because what happens is as a 120% teacher, you think the harder I'm working, the better the situation is for my kids, right? Like I have to be doing that because, Daryl's down the hall and he's doing it. So I don't want to be a slacker, and he's doing all the learning down there. But the thing that I finally realized was that the person who is doing the most work is actually getting the most out of it. And I realized it when I was teaching French. So my very first, or my second teaching job, my second year teaching, I taught French because I was alternative certified. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't get a job teaching English because there were other people who wanted those jobs, but nobody wanted the job teaching French. And I have a degree in French.
Hey, it's meant to be.
Don't come up to me at a conference and speak to me in French. I probably will not understand you. Because it's been a really long time. But anyway, I was teaching that, and I was making worksheets. I was creating worksheets. It was really fun. I actually was really enjoying it. And I thought, man, I have never remembered vocabulary better than when I was making these worksheets. And that's when I had that moment, like those moments where you feel like the cartoon character where the light bulb's going off above your head. Like, I have never learned this vocabulary better because I am making this worksheet for other people who are now going to do the worksheet but not know the vocabulary any better. What is wrong with this picture? And it's, it's also, 9 p.m. and I have a baby and I'm doing this at 9 p.m. and I am really learning a lot.
Yeah.
Like
I felt the same way teaching math. I had to do a lot of prep work
right?
to get ready to teach 5th grade math. And I thought, gosh, I'm really exposing all my lack of learning over the years because I'm learning so much when I'm prepping to teach this class.
Right. Did you have that moment where it occurred to you if the students did the work you were doing that they would actually be doing the learning that you were getting?
Yes, but what's so funny as you're talking and you're saying about when you were teaching French, of course I knew you at that time in your life and I knew how you were teaching
They let
your
me teach your English class too.
Yeah, they let you.
Because I was the only person who had a master's degree in English.
Yes.
So thank you.
We needed the master's degree teacher because we're a very special group of kids.
Right.
Well, I will say that the irony here is that you're saying you learned all these vocabulary words, but I literally remember one single activity from high school English class, and it was something that we did as a project-based assignment, and it was a vocabulary scaffolding activity. I still remember I cannot remember what I ate for dinner last night, or what I said to my husband on the way out the door this morning, but I can remember the word carry-on from the vocabulary activity we did for maybe Beowulf. Maybe some classic novel. I don't even remember the novel. It doesn't matter, but I remember the vocabulary word and what it meant. And I still have never read that word in a novel since then, but I remember the word because we did this activity and I had to do a lot of work to understand and prep a presentation to teach other people that word. And then suddenly, I won't tell you how many years it's been, but I remember that word really well.
That's so weird. That's what sticks in your head.
So carry on. The bag you can bring onto an airplane?
No, like dead flesh.
Oh,
that's why she's thinking
it's a lot.
That's why she's thinking it's Beowulf.
It's really pretty dark for a high schooler. But at the end of the day, I remember the vocabulary word. I remember the graphic that I created. I remember the activity that I did with my classmates. I remember all of that. And so I think if I had just learned the word the traditional way, so to speak, where I'd just written the sentence several times and done what is the strategy when you draw the picture and you, I mean, I may have remembered it at the time and I probably still know the word today, but I don't remember anything else vocabulary wise that I did.
But you had to teach it, right?
Correct. I had to teach my classmates. I had to learn how to explain it to other people in ways that they would understand. And, it was a lot of work on my end and I remember it very well. Right. So I like to talk about that counterpoint when you're telling the story because literally this many years later, a couple of decades, I remember that activity very clearly.
Yeah. It's just it's one of the biggest mind-opening things that you will ever have, if it hasn't already occurred to you, is that the person doing the work is the one doing the learning. And so worksheet thinking is, I'm going to give it 120%. I'm going to stay up until all hours creating stuff for my students to use to learn. And worksheet killer thinking is what I call it in the book, is when you realize that I've got to figure out how to get other people to do this work. And you guys tease me all the time that I am the master manipulator at work of getting other people to do work.
We've never said that, Amy.
Yeah, they say that. But it started when I was a teacher, because I was like, my job now is to figure out how to get you to want to do this, because I'm not going to be over here trying to force you to do it. That's not my personality. It's just not how I operate. I don't see the world that way. But I have got to create a situation where you want to do this work. And so Jess wanted to teach that vocabulary word, and I'm sure there were others. That's the one she remembers. But surely I didn't just have her teach one vocabulary word.
Oh, no, there was more.
There was more, okay. But her job was to teach other people these words and to make a situation where other people would remember these words. And what imbued that assignment with action for her was that she stood up in front of her peers. I'm almost certain.
Oh, absolutely. There's like social capital involved, and
Yes.
there was a lot of pressure from outside.
And you really cared what everybody in that class thought about you
Yes.
and your reputation with those people. And they were all high achievers too in that particular class, although I've used this same strategy in every level
absolutely.
of classes I've
so
ever
have
taught.
I.
And you
Fifth
did
graders
too.
too. Yeah, I taught
Right.
5th and 7th grade, and they also had the same response.
So my job as a teacher wasn't to create something so you could learn the word carrion or any other vocabulary words you taught. It was to create a situation where you wanted to study that vocabulary and you wanted to share what you learned with other people.
Yes.
That's my job as a teacher. And when I can bust out of that thinking of it's my job to teach you this and bust into it's my job to create a situation where you are dying to learn this and tell other people.
Yep.
Then my job as a teacher becomes a different, it is literally a different job. And that's a way better job. That's the job, not the job you have probably, but that's the job you want to have.
Right. So from the student's perspective, it's like I'm responsible for other people's
Yes.
learning. So I'm not just responsible for me, but my friends, my peers who I'm in a group with. I need to make sure I get this right.
Exactly. And they're going to think, I don't know, they're going to think that I am smart and capable and all that kind of stuff if I do my job as a student correctly. And so creating a classroom culture of my learning represents me as a person is what I think most every teacher would tell you they would love to be the teacher in that classroom, where students believe that their learning represents them as a person and the hard work that they're putting into their learning. And that's what I'm hearing from teachers I talk to right now is profoundly not the situation that most teachers are walking into on a daily basis.
So reading your chapter, I just realized how masterful of a storyteller you are.
Oh, thank you.
Because you had a story in there, and I was captivated with the students, like not wanting to, do what they're supposed to be doing, but you had a strategy to start anew, to get them intrinsically motivated where
Yes.
they are doing the learning.
This is a true story.
It's a true story.
Yes.
Oh wow, okay, I believe that. I know it's a true story. I'm just like, oh wow, everything is. But anyways, so we're gonna get into question slips then.
Okay, let's do it. So every good professional development solves a problem that you have. And if you don't have the problem, you could still go and say, oh, that was a good speaker, or, I like how they use their slides,
That was
or whatever.
an interesting topic.
That was an interesting topic, but it's not going to be great for you unless it solves a problem you have. So I want to ask you, too, if you have encountered this problem, especially you, Daryl, because I already know Jessica's used this strategy in her classroom before, so I know she did. So you give your students some directions, and you're trying to help them become more independent. And the very next thing that happens is this. Mr. Legaspi, can I write in a blue pen?
This has never happened to me.
No,
That happened to me
never?
all the time. All the time.
Right.
Yes.
Mr. Legaspi, can I write my name at the top left this time instead of the top right?
Yes,
Mr.
that's right.
Legaspi,
Go.
do I put a
Yes.
title on this?
Yes.
Mr.
How many times
Legaspi,
have I
how many
told you?
pages does
Yes.
it need to be?
Yes.
Mr. Legaspi,
10.
can I draw a picture in here? Mr. Legaspi,
Yes.
Mr. Legaspi.
Okay, that's enough.
Right.
Exactly.
That's enough.
Right? You got it.
I got it.
Has this ever happened
Oh my gosh,
to
PTSD.
anyone? Right? Anyone who's watching this podcast? Has this ever happened to you?
Oh yes. You just become at that point in the conversation, miss.
And you're like, we are doing a worksheet again tomorrow
yeah.
because kill me now. I cannot.
yes.
And then you get home and your significant other says, what do you want for dinner tonight? And you say, oh my God, I cannot answer another question.
Carrying that baggage home. Yep.
Stop asking me for things. I can't make another decision because you have made I said a number in here, I think. I don't know. There's
Quite a few
there's an
decisions,
estimate of the number of decisions that you make in a day as a teacher that's in this chapter of this book. And you are so decision overloaded by the time you get off work that is another kind of fatigue that you add to the pile. It is truly, it's one of the hardest things about teaching.
Right.
And it's like, I did not care about 99% of the questions. One kid in a day might ask you a question that you're like, that is an intriguing question, sir.
Very profound. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks
It's
for that.
It's what I needed.
That's why I am coming back to work tomorrow, because you asked that one question today that actually applied to what I wanted you to be thinking about. But that's not most of the questions that you get as a teacher.
No.
No, a lot of procedural questions. Just a
So
lot of,
many.
Can
and
I go to the
things
bathroom?
You just don't care about. Can I go to the bathroom? Number one.
It takes up a lot of instructional time too.
Oh
I mean,
my
I could have been way
gosh.
more effective. Like I mentioned, I taught like upper elementary, lower middle school for a large portion of my career. And I would say you spend in a 45-minute period, and I know a lot of teachers can identify with this, you spend more than half with procedural stuff. Like you don't even get to the actual teaching part of your day a lot of the time.
Yes.
As much as you might prepare for it, doing all the work yourself. And then you get in there and the kids aren't listening, or they didn't understand, or they didn't have their pencils, or they didn't have their stuff out when you were talking and they were distracted. You know, there's just all these reasons that kids aren't hearing the instructions or aren't hearing the outcome or whatever. And then you've now wasted your time,
Yes.
and you're not going to get it back.
And you do it again tomorrow and again the day after that. And it is so wearisome. So if these are problems that you've had, then this is, for me, and I think for Jess too,
Yep.
it was a solution to this problem, and it's called a question slip. And I learned it from a presenter, and I really wish I knew his name. I don't. All I know is he was Canadian, and in about 2009, he had a really bad cold. And he still came to the conference, and he still did his presentation. And this poor man, he was so sick. He was literally like slumped over, like barely talking.
Oh.
But he still showed up and did it. It was at the Lone Star Convention Center in Conroe, Texas. So I would love to find out who this person is, because I don't remember his name, but he gave this concept. And he was a Kate teacher, CTE. I know there's lots of different names for that. But he was like a business teacher, and he gave this concept. And the concept is this. You make little slips, and you will get a link to those slips in this podcast that you're watching that you can use. And you make these little slips for your classroom, and you hand them out to groups or teams. So yes, you're probably thinking like, well, my students work mostly independently. Whatever, doesn't matter. Even if they're doing it independently, you put them into a group. So you say, you know, you guys are working together in a group. And when you get started, especially small groups, 3 people are easier to work with than 4 people, and 4 are easier than 5, I think, most of the time. So you will put them into groups, and that is their group or team. It doesn't matter if the work they're doing is independent or it's teamwork. Doesn't matter. That's their team. So they get the question slips, that group of people. And if there are 4 people in the group, then they have to have 4 signatures and so on and so forth. And so you give these little slips of paper out to those teams, and you say, we're going to have, you tell the kids, we're going to have unlimited question time every day in this classroom. So generally for me, it was when we started class, we had some kind of a warm up or bell ringer or whatever. And then I would tell them, this is what we're working on today. This is what we need to accomplish today. And then we have open question time. Anybody can ask any question they want to, and that goes on as long as questions are still coming in.
Okay. I was going to ask, is there a time limit to that?
No, because, and I thought I would have to set a time limit. I thought I would have to say, for 10 minutes, we're going to have open question time, and then it closes. Nope, never happened, because they can't think of anything else to ask, because the question about what color pen they need to write with doesn't happen. That doesn't occur to them until they pick up a writing implement.
Right. Oh.
By then, open question time's over, right? Right? I don't think of it till later. So once the questions stop coming in about what we're doing today and how we're going to do it and anything else. Any question that's related to what we're working on.
Okay.
Yes. So then it is closed question time. Open question time will happen again tomorrow. So, it's only 24 hours till we do it again, but now I'm giving you question slips.
Okay.
And I also want to give your team 1 less than the number of people in your team. So if you have a 4-person team, I'm going to give you 3 slips.
Okay.
If you have a 3-person team, I'm going to give you 2 slips.
Why is that?
Because I don't want you as a team member to say, well, this is my question slip, and
use it if I want
more
to.
I can use it if I
psychology.
want to,
Wow,
and I
okay.
just we're going to dole these out. Everybody gets one because I want to make you decide with each
Right.
other. I don't want you to cheat my system, right? Yeah, you think I don't
manipulative.
play games, Daryl, but I do play games. So I'm giving you the question slips, and the first time we do this, I'm explaining to you, like any question you guys come up with that you want to ask, all you have to do is talk about it amongst yourselves, and then you all agree that's a question. You sign this, and you give it back to me. That's it.
So they all have to sign the slip.
They all have to sign the slip, everybody in the team. So if there's 3 people in the team, they have 2 question slips, and they need 3 signatures to use one.
And is that the question slips per day or per?
I thought it was going to be per day, and I printed enough out for it to be per day for many days. I never printed them again. Not my whole teaching career did I ever print them again.
No kidding.
Because hardly anyone ever uses a question slip. It's very, very rare to ever get a question slip back. I bet I only ever got back maybe 5.
Really?
In 5 years of teaching, I bet I only got back 5 question slips.
Because I'm assuming they were asking each other.
They were asking each other. And do y'all think I can write with this blue pen? Mr. Legaspi said he does not care what kind of pen we write with. Go back to work.
Dude, they asked that yesterday, and she said she didn't care. I mean, those are the kind of things
Right.
my junior
Wow.
high students would say to each other as they knocked each other on the shoulder. Dude, she asked that yesterday. We already know the answer to that. Don't ask her that. It's a waste of question slip.
Right. We're not wasting a question slip on that. But if I created the situation where there's enough for everybody to have one every day. Now, if they give me a question slip, I give them another one. So question slips are actually unlimited. Right? Because if you turn in a question slip and you ask a legitimate question,
Yeah. It's like, oh, I like that. You're good.
that's a great question. I'm going to give you another question slip. Now you just filled your whole. So really you could get
Right.
as many as,
Oh.
right? The question slips are truly unlimited, but they won't use them.
Yeah.
They don't want to give you the question slip. This is how I would get them back. It's the last day of the school year, and it's usually a boy
Right.
who has folded the little question slip up and he's kept it in his wallet all school year. And it's a sad little, like soft little piece of paper. It's all creased and soft. And he's like, Miss Mayer, I still have this. What do I get for it if I turn it in? And I'm like, you get the gift of knowledge. You already got the knowledge.
I
You
was
don't
never
even
all
have to
within
I
turn
was
it
never
in.
as successful
It
with
was all
the
within you all the time.
mental gymnastics that kind of conversation took. I did have to incentivize mine, which it works for me.
What did you do? What did you do in junior high? How's it
used,
different?
So when I first used question slips, it was with 7th graders who were brand new to, I mean, this was their first year doing any sort of departmentalized learning. They had never
Yes.
been on independent rotations before. They'd always been with their same group and moved from class to class. So it was a lot overwhelming for them. And I knew this was going to be a growing pain, and I was really like anticipating having a lot of pushback from parents. So I did a really good job, in my opinion, of laying that out there at the very beginning of the year. And we didn't start right away. I think the first 3 or 4 weeks of school, we didn't use question slips. And some people would say, oh, you should start your routines at the beginning of the year. You should, but I knew my audience. I knew
You know
what we were
what?
dealing with.
If you don't know what you're doing today, but tomorrow you find out something new, then you should start tomorrow.
Right, exactly. True
Right.
statement. True statement. So I started about 3 or 4 weeks into the year, and I did the similar, free question time. I did put a time limit on mine. I had high achieving students. They were very crafty, and they knew how to work the system, which was great. I actually think that's really I love to appreciate a smart solution to a problem, but I had to combat that somehow.
That's you.
That is me. Absolutely me. I'm a creative, crafty little problem solver. So the thing is, though, is that I would put a time limit, but I would do, I had the red light, yellow light, green light situation in my classroom. Green light was questions are free. Yellow light means, okay, I haven't gotten any questions.
That's
Kind of
a smart little turn of.
to your strategy. You said, okay, as soon as the question stopped, question time is over. Okay, questions have stopped. I'm going to give you 5 more minutes. Yellow light. If you have questions, you can come to my desk and ask me. But after the red light,
You didn't make the questions whole group. You let them come to you individually and ask the questions.
Yes.
I was forcing them to ask their question in front of
well,
everybody.
we had the group situation also, so it was just a little different
I
application
actually
of the
like
strategy.
that though.
Yeah, so
and
they
I
were
think
able
that
to.
could be like a scaffolding move for anybody starting question slips.
Yep.
Is allowing open question time to be individual.
Yes.
That's really smart.
Yeah, and then after the red light's on, no more questions. You have to use a question slip. You got to have your group, and it was kind of a combination of the ask 3 before me strategy, which
Yeah.
a lot of us have used in our career, and then of course this question slip strategy of this capital. So I turned it into almost like, well, for middle schoolers, if you have your question slips left over at the end of the 9-week marking period, we can do something with them. If you have high grades and you don't need extra points, we can do some preferred activity time. You can go play on your Chromebook and go to math games or whatever. If you have a need for an extra credit or need extra points, we can exchange it for that. So we kind of, in my classroom, we used it a little differently, almost like a currency at the end of the 9 weeks. That worked well for me. But I always tell this story, and I don't know if you were ready to talk about this part of it.
Yeah,
but
let's talk about it. What happens with parents? Is
yes,
that where you're going?
Parents are always a challenge because, like I said, you have to really prep parents for this, especially like in my situation where parents were also new to the departmentalized learning and the kids being on independent rotation. So, and by that, what I mean is kids going to class on their own schedules. So I was teaching at the time a pre-AP course, which means the parents are usually more involved. That just happens to be how it works out with the student academics. And so I had to really prepare the parents for this, and I thought I did a good job. And here I am 4 or 5 weeks into my question slip strategy, and it seemed to be working really well. And here I am on cloud nine. I'm the best teacher in the world. I'm doing this really cool thing. And one day, the assistant principal at my building came to my classroom, and he just stood in the doorway as I was teaching, and I was like super nervous. I'm a people pleaser. I don't like getting in trouble. I don't like being called out for anything.
And was he your observer?
Yes, he was my
your
evaluator. Yes.
Okay.
So he's standing there at the door, and he's not saying anything. He's just standing there, which is almost the most excruciating thing for people like me. I'm just like, what's happening right now? But I got to teach. I got to look good. I got to do my best job. So I'm like teaching. I'm doing my thing, and we get to that point in the class where I'm saying, okay, we got any more questions? Questions are free right now. Okay, no more questions? Oh, you got a question? Let me answer that question. I did that for a few more minutes. Okay, I'm going to turn the yellow light on. We have 5 minutes. If you think of a question while you get started, because that's when a lot of questions happen, like you mentioned. As soon as I pick up my pencil, here's my question. 5 minutes of yellow time. And then as soon as that red light comes on, guys, you have to use a question slip. So get ready, be thinking. And so I did that, and I kind of wandered over to my desk, and with my eye on the corner of my eye looking out, and I see him just walk away. And of course, he didn't say a word to me the whole time, and it's just like killing me.
Well, this is stress till school's over.
Right?
My gosh.
Oh,
so as soon as class is over and class exchange time, and I've got like 7 minutes to run to the front office, and I'm like, I need to know what that was about. Please put me out of my misery. He's like, oh, I had a phone call from a parent. And I was like, well, now I really want to know what's happening. He said, no, you answered my question. And I was like, how did I answer your question? I didn't even know it. And he said, I needed to see this question slip situation play out. The parent was very concerned that their child wasn't having their questions answered in class. And I said, oh, and he said, is that how it runs every day? I said, that's how it runs every single day. Open questions, yellow question time, question slips after the red light. He's like, that's awesome. I love that. And he was like, never again that he supported that for the rest of the time we worked together.
Well, and he knew what to say.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't think that it was a situation where the parent was like, this teacher sucks, she doesn't answer questions. I think the parent didn't understand the system. The student was feeling stressed because a lot of high-achieving students get very stressed out about things like that.
Sometimes defensive, like, well, it's not my fault because Miss Powell wouldn't answer my question.
Yes,
so,
and I'm an easy scapegoat. I'm not there to say anything to mom. So, you get to that situation and you just work through it. But it worked out very well. And it made it the situation where my administrator could support everything that I was doing, because they not only did they see in action how it worked out, but also they had something very concrete they could go back to the parent and say. So that was for me, that was like one of those like wins as a teacher, to have the evaluator see it play out. And it just so happened he walked out in the classroom when it was going down.
That's so perfect.
It worked. But I'll never forget that moment, because it was very stressful for me, but also it was like
also as a victory.
It was.
Ultimately,
it truly
was.
was. Yeah.
So can we kind of like circle back, because we started out talking about student-centered learning, and I want to go back there again, because I think that in contrast to what we all probably thought student-centered learning meant, this is actually a really good example of student-centered learning. Like, I really am making you more responsible for your own learning. And what happened in my classroom as a result of question slips is that when we're getting class started, everybody is listening to me. Like, nobody is messing around doing something else. Nobody is working on their math homework that they have to turn in next hour right now, because this is the only time that Ms. Mayer is going to give these directions. She is not going to drone on for 60 minutes of this class. She's going to give these directions. She's going to have open question time. I'm going to be responsible for doing something. And so it changed the dynamic in my classroom in a way that was so much better for students. And what I told parents when I talked to them about this is, I'm helping your student to be a more independent learner.
Yes.
And that's really ultimately my job as a teacher. It's not, because I can't go with them to the next grade level, no matter what that is.
Right.
It can't happen. So I have to teach them to be more independent. And this is a great segue toward being more independent. And I ultimately had students do really cool things that they never would have done, because if they had asked me, I would have said, no, you don't need to do that. Why would you do that? That's so much work. Don't do that.
Right.
Instead, they would do these things and they would be like, I had kids all the time be like, we want to go to the library. And they would bring a question slip. And I would say, that's not a question. You don't need to give me the slip. I'm going to write you a pass. You can go to the library. We need to go to the library is not a question. Can we go to the library is a question, but we need to. And so we learned how to say what we need to get our learning done. We need to go to the library is great. Like, hopefully you're working on something really cool, you know? So it changed the dynamic in my classroom toward being more student-centered in a legitimate way that did not give me a headache. And I never answered any questions again about what color pen or where do I write my name or whatever, because I said that during open question time if it was a question. And if it never came up, that would be even better.
So during this process, the question slips has been introduced. What are some of the activities your students were doing, and what were you doing in the meantime? What was your role as a teacher in the classroom during that time?
So I was doing a lot of project-based learning-esque type stuff too. But in my classroom, I always had kids working on something that was independent and something that was teamwork. And so the teams were used across all of that time. So let's say they were working on something that was independent, then what I would just be doing is walking around. I was always interested in listening to the conversations they were having with each other, because they had this pseudo team, even if what they were doing was independent, they would end up having really good conversations with each other. Like, what do you think this question means? Or how did you answer this? Or whatever. I want those conversations going on in my classroom. So I get to listen for misconceptions. Once I hear, what do you think this question means, from 3 different people at 3 different tables, then I know I need to say, everybody, pay attention up here for just a minute. Let's look at this question. Number 3 is ambiguous. I've heard 3 different people ask about this. So let's talk about what we think number 3 means. And even if it's independent work, now I have that information and I can talk about that with everybody. If they were working in teams, then I listened to a lot of dynamics. You know, I really got to know how people were working together and what their, sometimes people are really great at teamwork and they bring a lot to that situation, and sometimes people are not so great at it and it's really challenging for them. And so I got a chance to listen for those things. And so later on, when issues came up, like, so-and-so is not doing their part or whatever, that wasn't the first I ever knew about that. And I think it took a lot of anxiety off my shoulders as being a person who was having students work together a lot, that I did feel like I knew so much about those dynamics, because they weren't talking to me. When I walked over to their table, they didn't stop what they were doing and wait for me to address them.
Right.
They're working
you were irrelevant
together.
to them in some ways.
I was irrelevant to them because they couldn't ask me anything.
Right.
And so that changed the dynamic too, letting me just stand there and be an observer, not get into their team dynamic, not participate with them, and just listen to them.
Yep.
And it was almost like I disappeared out of that. And I think that's how it was in your classroom.
It was, and I actually was in the classroom during that. Well, it's still the era, but it was kind of becoming a thing at that point where we had to do a lot of small group work in the secondary, which was not something that traditionally was being done in secondary. And that freed me up too for a lot of those small group rotations that needed to happen.
Yes.
And I was able to do things like something that I don't see a lot of teachers doing still. We do it in professional development in our WOW Academy. Where we teach teachers to set appointments with students. Like, okay, you have something you need to learn, something individually that you're not understanding, make an appointment with me. Right. So during this time when the students are working independently, but also in conjunction with the group, again, like you just mentioned, they're answering their own questions interpersonally. And so they don't need me for that. So I'm able to do things like entertain appointments and work with individual students on things they're not understanding. This is above and away from the question slip situation. These are academic
But it
needs.
changed the dynamic of your classroom.
Absolutely.
In such a way that you could really do more of what you needed to be doing, because you weren't answering 10 billion irrelevant questions.
Right.
And they had somebody to lean on and talk to. And further, if you're constructing your assignments in a certain way, they had a motivation to complete those assignments that was external to just, I'm going to turn this in to Miss Mayer, Miss Powell, Mr. Legaspi.
Right, absolutely. And honestly, our whole careers, we've all heard, be the guide on the side, not the sage on the stage. And that is one of those phrases that everybody says it, but do we all really understand how to do it? And this is a great way to structure, like we've talked about this student-centered learning. I think people have a lot of great ideas in their mind, these grand plans for how they're going to have a student-centered classroom, and then they get the actual human beings in their seats in their classroom, and these kids don't have a lot of personal like structure. They don't understand how to do it. And especially now in the post-pandemic times when we had a lot of disruption to those classroom norms and those
right. You're getting people who really have a lot less classroom experience than you were before.
And the classroom structure still hasn't seemed to come back where we thought it needed to be. So I think this is a great structure, a scaffold for a structure that you can use, and it really will truly teach students to be independent learners. Right. Which I think is something we want for them always.
Yeah, I talk about that in the beginning of this chapter, and you made me think about it again, that whole sage on the stage, guide on the side, and student-centered learning and all that kind of stuff. And I start this chapter off by talking about how stress-inducing I think those terms are. Like, you're told these things and you get this information like you may have heard the first time, like if you're new in education, that worksheets are bad, like don't do worksheets. Worksheets are terrible, like you're a bad teacher if you're doing that. And there's all these kind of messages, but there's not the alternative of, oh, but this is what you do instead. This is how it looks. This is how you should be doing it.
Right.
It just stops at the kind of the shaming piece.
Yep.
And you don't get the rest of it. So how do you proceed? Like what, okay, this is how it looked when I went to school. It's literally the only model I might have as a teacher coming into a system. And also when I look around at other teachers, they may look like they're doing what I think I'm supposed to be doing, but then I get this contradictory message. There's so many contradictions. And it's not within the culture of most school districts to be in that PD and say, what does that mean when you say that, student-centered learning? Like, what do you mean by that?
You don't want to be the one who says that out loud.
Oh my God, you get killed at lunch.
Oh yeah.
Like,
why did you say that?
Right. Our shut up. It's going to make it take longer.
Yeah, they're going to say something. I always got this one. They're going to say something to your principal. Well, okay, well, I don't understand this. And so, ironically, as teachers who are lifelong learners, we didn't feel very comfortable not knowing something. Ever. So, you're absolutely right. That culture does not exist in most school districts. Just probably not by any means other than just that's how it turns out. You know what I mean? Just turns out most teachers don't like to not know things. So they don't talk about it. They don't speak up. And then they get asked to do things like differentiation. And it becomes this nebulous word that means nothing to you. And you just nod your head and say, yeah, I'm differentiating.
I went to PD for years and heard about differentiated instruction. And I was supposed to be there learning how to do differentiated instruction. And I would leave again. I mean, for literally years and think, I still do not really know what they mean by that.
Like, what does it look like in real practice? Yeah. And that's something we all struggle with as PD providers, is to make sure that I'm not just giving you this high idea that's a pie in the sky idea. I'm actually teaching you something that, here's the high idea, but then here's how it looks in the actual classroom with actual
that's what
students.
We do at friEdTech.
That's
and
exactly right.
Unfortunately, that's not what usually happens in PD. Like, that's... I think, and I am often told that is still really rare, to take it down to this is how it's going to look in your classroom tomorrow. And this is how you start it. In the first 5 minutes of class tomorrow, this is what you do. Yeah. And I think that's why teachers love to learn with us, because we all had that experience and we all got together and we all said, did you know what that meant? No, I didn't know it. Do you know? No. Okay, nobody knows. All right, we're good. We're going to carry on doing our thing because nobody knows.
There's that word again, carry on.
There it is. Yeah.
And we travel a lot, so there's a lot of that kind of carry on. There's so much carry on around here. Yeah.
Because and the way that this chapter is laid out, you have like opportunities for teachers or whoever's reading it to reflect, and then at the end you have takeaways, like tangible takeaways that they can do, especially like this example of question slips that they can take and do right away in their classroom.
Yes. I do, and everyone is structured like that. And I do, in the foreword to the book, I really talk about why I used to really hate reflections, and yet they're in every chapter of this book.
But it made me think, too, like, oh.
But I hated them because I got assigned reflections in college education classes, and nobody read them.
Yeah, that's the worst.
Yes, and I started, like, writing things that I thought I will find out now if someone reads these. Well, no one read them. I know no one read them now. I've tested the system many times. No one read them.
I read them.
You probably would have read them.
I forgot the reflection question.
120% guy over here read his students' reflections, but nobody else read them. And that is the part that made me mad. That's the hypocrisy that we often have in education, is assigning something and not saying to people, this reflection is not for me, therefore I am not going to read it. I want you to reflect for yourself. For your own self. Because
I didn't read them.
Right. You didn't read them.
I actually read the question.
Thank
I didn't read the answers that they made. That's what I thought.
Right.
I was like, wait, no, that wasn't me.
Like otherwise ChatGPT's writing this.
Yeah.
And it truly is meaningless then.
Yeah.
Don't ask people to write reflections for you. That's not how reflection works. Reflection happens in your own brain.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, you can read more of those rants in the book. There's so many of them.
But
it's
I love
pre-sale on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. Yeah.
Books A Million. I've never heard of that.
Ooh,
I hadn't either. Publisher.
Wow. Don't let my husband hear about it. We'll spend all of our money there.
You'll need $1 million.
We'll need $1 million.
Books, yeah.
I do really like the takeaways. That to me makes something, and this is in any learning situation where I am really trying to be thoughtful about what I'm reading or hearing and then doing some sort of internal reflection, but having a takeaway that I can then take to get me started, because I can get really overwhelmed by this concept that's new to me. I love the concept. I think it's really cool, but how am I going to actually take it and put it into practice tomorrow? Here's this one thing I can do that will help me get there. It facilitates that transition to that new thing that I'm doing.
Yeah.
I like that. That
me
helps
too.
me.
That's what I need personally. If I don't have that, the likelihood of me making a change is really small.
Yeah.
If I don't have that.
Yeah.
So, and actually, there's another kind of takeaway in this book, too. So every chapter of this book at the end has got 2 to 5 different sentences that summarize the things that, I was hoping you would realize this and take this away from this chapter. So there's a bunch of different kinds of takeaways in the book. One is you get the question slip today because hopefully you listened to this and it resonated with you and you have been there and felt that and you need a strategy to help your classroom be more student-centered. But also these this is what I'm telling you I realized during this chapter of this book. So this is what I'm hoping that you, reader, take away from this. So then if somebody tries to make you read the book and you don't actually want to.
At the end, just go straight to the end.
Straight to the end of each chapter. And you can sound so smart because you've got 3 to 5 sentences. And
some would say that's cheating, but we live in this, we live in a world where it's about using the resources you have.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is your principal going to try to make you read the book? It's very possible that could happen.
No, it's a good book. It's fun to read.
I really hope that, if somebody is in the situation where they're forced to read the book, that they start reading it and then they go, oh, that's actually pretty good. I think I'm going to read this book.
Yeah.
I was just going to read the takeaways, but no, I think I'll read it.
Just go back, yeah.
Yeah.
I read it at Jiffy Lube.
Well,
Jiffy Lube.
thanks. Jiffy Lube.
Now you have Jiffy Lube. Jif. Team Jif all the way, y'all. Comment if you're Team Jif. If you're not Team Jif, don't comment. We don't want your comments.
That's because we don't have to be right out loud,
Well, that was great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And when can we expect the book to come out?
Well, it is very important for the book to have pre-orders. So you can
Pre-order.
pre-order your copy at any point in time. It's called Beyond Worksheets. You can find it on any platform where you can buy books. You will not get it until I hear June, early June. You will automatically get that if you pre-order it. But early June, you will be able to actually
So just in
buy
time
it.
for summer book studies.
Yes. Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry. I do. I actually say it in the book. If someone is making you read this, I apologize to you. And I also wonder, it will make me wonder if it is used as a book study, did your principal actually read it? I'm curious about that because I think this book is for teachers. I don't know if it is as friendly to most administrators. So I'm really curious what administrators will make it through the book and will go, yeah, this is what we need. I'm curious.
We need to hear this now. Now that's going to be a whole.
Yeah.
We need to do a study, a market
It's a
analysis.
mystery.
We need
All
to
right.
know.
All righty. Well, I think that sums it up.
All right.
Thank y'all so much.
Thanks for having us, Daryl.
Well, thanks
Bye,
for
everybody.
being here.
Yeah.
Inviting me to the Fried House.
Yes.
Here I am.
Nice place to
Same
be.
room.
And you wear
With our
fancy
teal
socks
wall.
and everything.
Fancy
Yeah.
socks. You all get to see. If you're watching, you get to see my socks.
Yeah. You're going to get a link to those socks, I feel like, in the notes.
I mean,
I'll tell you exactly where my wife
I could
got them.
give you a run for your money. I'm wearing Black Panther socks.
Oh.
Yes, they are definitely cartoon character socks.
Wakanda
Cartoon
forever.
Wakanda forever, for sure.
Wakanda forever.
Yeah.
Well, there you
I
go.
just have regular socks.
have to wear
Sorry.
socks.
Now you got to show us your socks.
If you have to wear socks, you may as well wear cool socks.
They're really lame socks. My socks are really lame.
Are they keeping your toesies warm?
They
'Cause it
are,
is kinda
you
cold
know,
here.
Zappos actually, like, I ordered like 3 pairs of socks from Zappos about 5 years ago, and they sent me like 35 pairs
Oh
of
wow!
socks.
Okay.
So I have a lifetime supply
go.
of
We're gonna wear a brand
these
new pair
certain
of socks each day.
And so does my daughter, and yes, we have a lot of socks. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's how we ended on socks. So y'all have a good one. Thanks for watching or
Bye.
listening. Bye.
Bye.